Hi everyone, I'm Alvaro, and in this video, I'm going to show you how to play chess. The first and most important thing before starting is to make sure that the square on our right is white. Chess is a turn game that faces two sides. One side has the white pieces and the other the black pieces. For example, the white would start and the black would counter. The goal of chess is to make checkmate on the contrary. The pawn. The pawn is placed in the second rank. From its initial position, it can move one or two squares. It is the turn of the black pieces, and now the pawn could not continue to advance because it has a piece in front. So let's move this one for example. And now it is the turn of the black pieces, and the black ones can make a capture. They could capture a piece if it was here or here, diagonally. So right now they can capture the white pawn. Our turn. The black ones play. Now it's us who can make a capture here. The black ones play, we play, the black ones play. And the time of the promotion comes. When a pawn reaches the last rank, it can become any of the pieces except the king. Here the usual thing is to take out the queen because it's the most valuable piece in the game. To practice the pawn's movement, I recommend this mini game. You can play with someone you know or against the machine. Below in the description you have a link. The king. The king is the most important piece in the game. He will be placed next to the queen, and his movement is the following. The king can move a square in any direction, either forward or backward. It's important to know that the king will never be able to move to a square, in which the next move can be captured. For example, here the pawn could capture the king in any of these two squares. If we move the king to this square, the next move can be captured. So it's not a legal move. The king, when he captures, for example, if we want to capture this pawn, just like the rest of the pieces, we capture and we stay in the square of the piece we have captured. There is one more movement that the king has, which is the castling. We have two types of castling, the short castling or the long castling. The short castling, for example, in this case, would be the following. We would move the king two squares to the rook, and we would place the rook next to it. The long castling, we would move two squares to the rook, and we would place the rook next to it. It's important to know that we can't make the castling if we have moved the king or the rook before. We can't castling either if any of the squares through which the king is going to pass to make the castling is threatened. To practice the king's movement, I recommend this mini game. You can play with someone you know or against the machine. I leave you the link in the description. The rook. The rook is placed in the corners. The rook can move in files or in ranks, and it can't move forward if, for example, we had a piece here. This rook could move to this square. When a rook captures an enemy piece, for example, this pawn, it stays in the same place of the piece it has captured. To practice the rook's movement, I recommend this mini game. You can play with someone you know or against the machine. I leave you the link in the description. The knight is placed in these squares, and it can move in L shape. For example, this knight could move here. From here it could move 1, 2, and 3 here, always forming in L. And, for example, this knight right now has all these possible movements. It could move here, 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 or here. When the knight captures an enemy piece, like the rest of the pieces, it stays in the same place of the piece it has captured. In this case, this pawn would be captured and it would stay here. As a peculiarity, the knight is the only piece that can jump other pieces. If, for example, we have a pawn here, this knight could jump the pawn and stay in this square. To practice the knight's movement, I recommend this mini game. You can play with someone you know or against the machine. I leave you the link in the description. The bishop is placed in these squares, and we will always start the game with a bishop of white squares, and another bishop of black squares, both for the white pieces and for the black ones. The bishop moves diagonally, like this. And, for example, if we had a pawn here, the bishop could not jump this pawn. It could move here, but it could not jump it. When it captures the bishop, like the rest of the pieces, it captures the piece and stays in the same place of the piece it has captured. To practice the bishop's movement, I recommend this mini game. You can play with someone you know or against the machine. I leave you the link in the description. The queen is placed in her color, and we have to check that the square on our right is white. The queen moves like the rook and the bishop together. For example, it could move in files, in ranks or diagonals. The queen, like the rest of the pieces, except the knight, cannot jump other pieces. It could not move beyond this pawn in this file. But, for example, it could move here. When the queen captures an enemy piece, it moves, captures the piece and stays in the place of the piece it has captured. To practice the queen's movement, I recommend this mini game. You can play with someone you know or against the machine. I leave you the link in the description. Let's see what is the check. For example, in this game, we can do right now check to the opposite king. To do check to the opposite king, we only have to threaten him with one of our pieces. The opponent has to defend against this check, because if not, the next move his king would be captured, and it would not be a legal move. For example, he could defend himself by placing the bishop in the middle, and avoiding that the bishop could capture his king. The checkmate is the objective of the game. If we do checkmate, we win the game. For example, let's see in this game. How can we do checkmate to the opposite king? For this, we only have to threaten him, and in his next move, he can't defend himself, and he has to be captured. For example, now the possible moves of the black is capturing the queen, which is not possible because it would be captured by the bishop, or move to this square, which is not possible because it would be captured by the queen. So, we are in front of a checkmate and we win the game. Let's see what is the stalemate. If, for example, in this position we move the queen to this square, we would have stalemated the enemy king, because the black king could not move to this square, nor to this square, nor to this square. In all of them, he would be captured. If we don't have a legal move, this is a stalemate and the game ends in a draw.